Welcome to another draw process. Ike here of Ike Comics. We're going to draw page 37 of First Sun and Sword, and I'll share my process and techniques and mindset stuff like I always do. Here's the thumbnail. You'll notice a little tiny thumbnail in Sharpie. That's showing me the layout I actually want for the images that I scribbled in. So what I drew was pieces of each panel that I needed, and then I realized I needed to organize them better, and did that on a very tiny thumbnail. What we have here is Sun trying to break his chains, lifting up, trying to break them, and then losing some hope. The dragoness reaction, she's almost like reaching for her sword. She just can't believe this is happening. She's indecisive, but not because she wants to protect Sun per se, because the Emperor will be very angry if King Croc eats the boy himself. So it's her life's at risk and everything else. The last panel there, it's a little warped the way my camera's positioned. I do that because I want it to be close to like my view, but I can't have it in the way of my head when I'm drawing. I'm not going to draw every day with the camera blocking my head. But that last panel's pretty small, and it's full bleed though, and it's King Croc laughing at Sun. And I don't know how much I want to get into this thought, but I was thinking I would talk about the convention that I just got back from a little bit, like some thoughts relating to community. But I'm thinking here about evil and how we convey it in our stories. Before I say something on that, so here I am sketching, and as I was watching myself piece together this video, I realized there's so much to notice when you watch someone doodle, when you watch someone sketch these out, and that I can notice, So the first drawing I did, I was going very organically, just naturally doodling out the form. But then the leg, it seemed like maybe a little more stiff, and then there was kind of a tangent, or like one of his legs was too much behind his other arm. And so I had to erase what I did, and then I tried to do a very fast sketch of Sun there, so that I can capture more the energy, the straight arms as he pulls back, and get the position right on those things, and then move right away from it to the next panel. Same thing there. I'm trying to get like the more cartoon extreme energy, straight lines, straight and curved lines that are more extreme, rather than getting bogged down in details. You saw I had the thumbnail to look at, but I'm just picturing in my mind him sitting there. What's nice about these is I didn't have to think too much about the background. I didn't have to think too much about the composition of my figure with other figures and the space around them and so on. I just had to really capture this figure doing these poses, made it feel much more smooth. And then I just put in the background afterwards. As you see, I'm kind of coming back and just tossing it in, because it's simple enough, and I can find a way to position it and make it work. Sometimes it's nice that he has a cape, but then it gets in the way. It's kind of funny how that works. Like there's shots here, or like more so on the next page that I already finished a couple days ago. But there's moments where like I want you to be able to see his back, like to see his body's form, and then I'm like, well, his cape's in the way. I'm gonna have to like have it twisted on itself and kind of curled around his body, get it out of the way somehow. And that's kind of funny. Almost like it's a physical object I have to move out of the way. But It's really just a drawing. So, yeah, there's lots of little things I notice as I doodle, as I watch myself, and I'll try to comment on those more, um, like why I make those changes. Like, so like here, we've got kind of a side view, but with a little bit of three dimensionality. I found his eye first because I knew like that eye needs to be in a certain position, and I know there's going to be a word balloon there. That's what those scribbles are. Him, laughing at son. Uh, this angle's kind of difficult on a crocodile head, and where I want to put the shadows isn't clear to myself yet. I didn't work that out really, and it's also hard because part of the head is falling off of the page, so it's hard. You noticed I drew his head way beyond the edge of the drawing, and sometimes I'll just like kind of ghost draw. Like I'll just kind of move my hand as if I'm drawing lines out past the edge of the paper, even to help my mind picture it. Okay, so I've got the quick sketch underneath. It's capturing the energy and the position I want. And now I've got to apply the anatomy, the pieces on top. And as I go, if I have an idea of where to put shadow, I go with that. I'm going with shadow being more on the front of his form, at least on his face and hair. So, yeah, evil. We want to tell compelling stories, and then we have to, I guess, pay attention to the stories you enjoy, that feel compelling. I think there's I don't know. I think there's tropes, or there's like a limited idea of what the evil characters would be like. These sort of archetypes we have in mind of what an evil character would be motivated by. They're going to have some kind of trauma and wound so we can maybe empathize with them to a degree, and it's some kind of fatal flaw, so they're tragic. And then which also applies to tragic heroes, but or they're just a mechanical force that impedes the hero, that just acts without will. But yeah, I mean it's interesting to think of what could evil be like when we look in the world and so on, or look at other stories or folk tales or whatever. So yeah, in this case, I've got King Croc. He's not like the lead, the highest villain. He's just lower than the main emperor. That's going to be the problem. But the idea with these reptiles, they're not mammals. So this is partly, I guess, scientific or biological, and partly just how I imagine it, right? But that informed my decision of like what would they be like, their interests and so on. So I don't think they're going to be like, they're not necessarily sadistic, right? But they're almost like animalistic, reptilian brain, right? Fight, hunger and urges to eat and so on. Not empathetic, like no social, they don't get really raised by a mother, the way mammals do. So like not social or empathetic in any way. So they kind of border towards being more like that, just force that just impedes the heroes. But then like they are not just lizards, they're like lizard men, okay? So and there's some lore behind it. And so what what motivations do they have? What is their psychological condition? Informed by some of those ideas I was stating about not being mammals, but uh, yeah, it's and they can all be a little different. King Croc, his when he speaks, you can tell that he doesn't use full language. He may leave out some words. He never speaks of himself in first person, for one. And these are things to just kind of figure out. And because you have limited options, I use a different font for his voice. You have limited options on like how to convey the tone in a comic, because there's no audio, and there's not a whole lot of words either, like in a book. So yeah, he's a little more just like more of a hungry force, greedy to a degree, like wanting power, like. But the emperor will be more intelligent and more human in his physical appearance than King Croc. And so like King Croc is like bigger, physically stronger, but he's no match for the emperor, who you could say is more human like, and who will be a much more serious foe. Much more intelligent and evil, you could say. Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's stuff that you have to figure out. And there's other characters. We have the dragoness here. She is not interested in doing good, really. But she's a more human. She's working in a system that's doing evil, and she's complicit in it, right? But she's gonna have emotions and so on, and reasons that she's gone down this tragic path. So maybe there's redemption for her someday in the story. Because I plan on running this story for a long, long time. So lots of episodes or chapters, or this would be issue 1, chapter 1. I guess I'm calling them episodes for now, which seems to fit better for like a web comic and for like the YouTube. But I guess it's more like a story arc or a chapter. I don't know. But I plan on doing this many years, I think, because I find it very satisfying. And a good playground for me to work in. So lots of time for these characters to develop and go through a lot. And so I'm thinking of like, as I go into this first, story, and I'm going to be wrapping it up, I do think about making sure I'm dropping in more pieces into my sandbox. Not only more like hints at lore and locations and types of beings or problems, but more characters that have something. There's some interesting thing about them. They've been fleshed out enough that I don't have to have their whole story figured out, but they're interesting enough that as we go, I've got pieces to play with down the road. Instead of just introducing a new character, every time I want to show something new happen, I can play with the ones that I've already established. So like in this issue, I'm going to show the Emperor at the end of this issue, and some other things that to kind of show how the danger and things are moving forward. So, but this is the first issue, and it's going to be good to establish the Emperor and some of the figures around him and things like that from right out of the gate. You'll notice I like I was playing with the shadows there. I put shadows on one side of his hand and then I moved it to the other when I didn't like how that looked. Um, so that's a lot of it. Just trying out some different options there. And I usually over detail a bit, like certain details in the hands. Over render a bit in the pencils because I'm trying to decide which ones are important enough to show. Now, the more experienced I get, eventually I'm going to be able to pencil more confidently, like kind of like know what details I need to add because I've already, I can just do it in my mind. But at the same time, the better I get at that, the more challenging I'm going to end up drawing things. In my earlier comics, the camera was a lot more like dead on, so that there was a lot less perspective and like foreshortening and stuff. And the further I go, the more complex I let those things get. So as it gets more complex, the environments, the architecture, the figures, and so on, and the camera angles, the more I'm gonna have to continue to kind of doodle and sketch extra details that I'm not gonna need to ink. And so, in some way, it'll always be with me to do it that way. I think there's no point at which I'm so confident that I don't have to doodle because I'll just draw more difficult things at that point. And if I look at this comic, which I recently did, I see that the art has improved, I would say, and changed some since the beginning pages or even the middle pages. It's just, I guess, more recently, even in the last several pages, they're changing some. And I attribute that to the work I've been doing to practice drawing and sketching and learning anatomy and stuff. Just keeping up much more regular and consistent in that. And I think it's advancing my development faster. But it's also that I've been working on this comic since November, 1 page per week, while still drawing at other times during the week. In the past, I might wait 6 months or through. Well, that's there was a time I probably did, but there might be a few months break or more, and then make one comic, and I get the whole thing drawn in a month. But then I'm not drawing a comic again for like 3-6 months. And then I'm drawing another one and I get it done in a month or two. And so there was no consistency. And that's because, part of that was because I had to write a new story, color and letter the comic, thumbnail it, do all that. And I was doing that as separate chunks, which left me with longer times in between drawing a comic. And this is like, every week I'm consistently on it, even though it's slower progress than I'd done before. It's more consistent, and I think it's leading to greater improvements. So that's definitely part of it too. And yeah, I'm happy with that. Glad to see what's kind of hints at what is possible, what my art and this book could be like in a year, let's say. Or however long it's been now, in another, it hasn't been a year yet, but yeah, double this time since November. And that, how much better can I be by then? If I stick with the practice, sticking with it. So the convention this past weekend, another one coming up in just 2 more weeks. Yeah, it's really nice to go see some people, some creators, the ones that are you would call highly successful, and that I've known a while, and then ones that you would consider more developing or more indie, less known, and so on. And then some that are like going all in freelance and actually achieving that, and that's awesome to be able to just quit your day job, go all in on doing commissions and sketches and things like that, and like yeah, just turning that into like a full-time gig with the consistency, motivation, hustle. That's awesome, and not easy to maintain either, but it's great that they can do that. um but yeah, like so many varieties of people in different places, but yeah, there was a lot to learn from all of them, and if we could just spend even more time together, I know there would be a lot of growth, a lot of development and dialogue, that conversations that would lead to growth for everybody. And I do crave that, but it's also nice to be alone at times too and just work on your thing. But those conventions are too few and far between, and the conversations are too brief. So, but it's still great, uh, inspiring to see, um, and it just, yeah, it really helps me feel like I'm really in a community. I'm really not in this alone. Um, there are other people on a similar path. We can help each other along. And I don't know that my art, what I've learned about making comics and even marketing and all that, just trying to make it as a creator, but everything I've learned and everything I do is for the community in a way. It's for the future generations. I think last week I said I want to commit to this this path I'm on of creating these comics and kind of being very consistent about it for decades, because when I'm older, so I'm like 37, when I'm 50, I want to be able to still do this with greater success, I hope, but still do this and and be someone to younger people that they can look up to. And that's kind of like saying to do this for the community, that my practice is for the community, that in a tribal society, like the warrior, his strength and his pride in his strength is for the community. Um, and it's still pride. It's still you know taking pride in yourself in a way, but it's what it's for. And yeah, that's just very motivating to me. And I don't know what else to say about it. It's just a feeling that I have about what matters, and it helps me have that long-term focus. Well, I've been so focused, I think I skipped over some comments I could have made on these pencils, but here we are. I just used one pencil the whole time, an H, I believe. I'm getting more and more comfortable with just sticking with one pencil. Um, and yeah, we're in the inking phase. Lots of choices to be made, lots of decisions in this phase. It's more flow. Like I could listen to a podcast or something while I do this part, not really during the pencil part, but nonetheless, there's a lot of decisions to be made to make sure that I'm putting the lines in the right place, not creating tangents between things. So um, the pencils this time, I did clock it because they're recorded at 2 times speed, so it was like 28 minutes, I think, into the video with the pencils. Now I had to speed them up a little bit to keep this video at like 35 minutes, try to keep it under 40. So they're like at 200, what would that be? 50 maybe? Yeah, 250%, like normal speed, 2.5 times. But yeah, so it was less than an hour to pencil the page, and it helps that again it's one figure like per panel pretty much, with simpler backgrounds. But I like that. I like that speed. I'm sure hoping to continue with speed in that ballpark, an hour, because I want to start drawing more pages per week than I have been. I would like to do at least 2 per week now. And if I can sit down with 1 hour available, like if that's all I have is 1 hour, that's enough to pencil a whole page. And I won't have it inked, but I can at least get that part done. And then I can come back and spend another hour inking it. So I need that flexibility. But yeah, I definitely want to try to do that, to try to do 2 per week. I'm coming back with the pencils sometimes if I'm not quite sure. When I look at it, if I'm doubting where I might put my lines, I can grab a pencil for a second and clarify. That is better for me. To me, that is smarter, more efficient than over penciling just to make sure I don't get into that situation. It would be better for me to learn while I'm inking, to learn to pause when I need to have that ability to assess the situation and stop myself, grab a pencil, and do it then. Because then I'm not over rendering everything all the time. It's just where it's needed, and that feels better. It's a better flow, and it's faster. His expression here, he struggled against his chains, and he's realizing he is trapped, and he knows he's about to get eaten. I figure he's about 10 years old, but his personality, I just keep getting a feel for what is he going to seem like, and what was his childhood like, right? So like, he's obviously his strength and him being a First Peoples, somehow that has been hidden from the emperor this long, but he definitely would have had some kind of caregivers. But I like the thought of giving him, I don't even want to say trauma, but like just some issues you might imagine in like a modern boy, let's say. Some of that like ADHD, impulsive, or just not always kind, not respecting authority, just kind of in his own world to some degree. I'd like to give him some of that. So a pretty rambunctious little boy feeling that might make him seem younger than 10 even. In some ways he might be immature. But I like the thought of there being a struggle with his behavior and his maturity. And I like the thought of, I think there's a lot of characters that are very introspective, and mature, but to give this type a chance to shine here and be someone you can really like, it would be nice, I think. So, anyways, yeah, he's got that expression with the wide eyes. Okay. What else to say? Yeah, I guess I could say like I'm trying to make a new banner for the upcoming conventions. I made a piece of art for it, but I need to color it and design the whole banner. But going to the convention, it changed. I see myself thinking a little differently about how to display at a convention and how to interact with people, like or I guess display mainly. Um, and I've got like a lot of books now, but to just have a rack of books on my table that people could look through, it's like I feel like the only people that are looking through it are someone who is interested in books, like they're actually looking for a book and going to take the time to explore a rack of books. I mean, it's like if you had a rack of t-shirts, the people walking by, someone's going to thumb through the t-shirts if they, if they're interested in t-shirts. But oddly enough, there's not that many people interested in comics. And so they're not feeling like, oh, I'm going to go thumb through these the way they would if it was like a t-shirt rack. There'd be plenty of people doing that. And so like it makes my display just look very mundane, not interesting to people. And part of that is I've got a lot of books, so I have too many to really display. Like each one couldn't be like super prominent, but yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about being more focused with how I display. So I would still bring all my books for people that are interested. Maybe there's room to stack them or put them on a rack to look through. But to make the display much more, let's say, focused on First Son and Sword, because this is my latest comic. It's the thing that if you saw these characters on a big banner, somehow it's the display is focused on these characters in this world rather than the comic book, then you might draw people in that are curious about characters and worlds. And then they may end up buying a comic book. But I think it's becoming harder and harder to just draw people in with a comic book because they're not looking for a comic. Now they're looking for story, they're looking for characters, really cool looking art, whatever. Yeah, people look for that at a distance. Art less so, I would say. But they're not really looking for comics typically. And that might be different at certain conventions over others, and we'll see. Next year I hope to go to some bigger ones. I've never been to I guess the biggest one I've done is Memphis Comic Expo, which is getting pretty big. It's getting pretty established and has some great guests there. But yeah, that's the I did Planet Comic Con before in Kansas City. But yeah, I tend to do smaller shows, which isn't a bad thing. The cost of tables at some of these conventions gets so prohibitive that it's not necessarily worth it. I think doing this YouTube and sharing my work this way is better. I get more real interaction, real connection with a larger audience than I do at a convention typically. So but that also changes what conventions are for to me. It's not necessarily to attract people, attract new readers. It's different when you don't need it for that because you're doing it in other ways. So I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. And I think a lot of people are thinking this way. Conventions are kind of changing. I know after some conversations at the convention, people are approaching conventions differently and selling and publishing and so on. They're approaching things differently than before. We're a ways out still. Maybe 15 weeks if I double my speed, or 20. Let's say 20 weeks maybe till this book's done. I wonder if I should do a Kickstarter or not, because I just running them's kind of a pain, and I could always do just pre-orders on my own site. So I guess you could let me know what you think about that in the comments. If you would like to see this on Kickstarter, or if you're fine with just like a pre-order. No, you're not eating me. Nuh-uh. Like I was saying, that kind of immature, rambunctious boy, and you can hear it in his speech. There it is, a pretty dramatic page. And thanks for watching. I'll catch you next week. Be the practice of your art and encourage others to do the same.